Hello, you're watching Gravitas. I'm Shreya Upadhyay. Let's begin. Our lead story tonight is a shocking revelation by an American website on how American deep state plotted the removal of jailed former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan. It also gives out details of the country's military working closely with the CIA to ensure that American interests are served. We get you the entire expose. We also get you an extremely unfortunate and condemnable decision by the Taliban. The group now says that the silence of a virgin Afghan girl is equal to consent for marriage. The new law essentially legalizes forced child marriage and adds to the list of moves made against women in Afghanistan. And it's the 18th of May, the day India announced her nuclear arrival to the world. Operation Smiling Buddha changed history forever and made India's enemies think twice before getting into a war with a nuclear-armed nation. More on this important milestone of history coming up on Gravitas tonight. Tonight, I have a story to tell you. It begins in 2021 and ends in 2022. And it involves a star prime minister, an army general, and the CIA. Now, you'd ask me who among all of them is the protagonist of this story. Well, you decide once you've heard the story yourself, which has been published by independent American website DropSite. Let's go back to June 2021. When American CIA Director William J. Burns traveled to Pakistan to meet with the then Prime Minister Imran Khan, the same Imran who is languishing in jail today. Burns wanted to secure Pakistani territory for US drone bases, which would later be used against targets in Afghanistan, since the American withdrawal had been finalized that time. The CIA Director waited and waited some more. He waited an entire day to meet Imran Khan in Islamabad. But the meeting never happened. Imran's office telephoned Burns to tell him that as per protocol, the Prime Minister would only take calls from his counterparts. And who was his American counterpart at the time? President Joe Biden, who as per the report had declined repeated requests from Imran for a direct call. It was unusual for the popular Imran Khan to take rejection, especially when in 2019, Donald Trump himself had invited him to the White House for a meeting. So Imran was upset and Burns didn't get his wish. Later that month, in an interview with Axis, Imran Khan vehemently denied any land being given to America. He said, and I quote, "Absolutely not. There is no way we're going to allow any bases, any sort of action from Pakistani territory into Afghanistan. Absolutely not." Later, in some days, the Taliban took over Kabul and the American withdrawal was a complete mess. A chaos that left the Biden administration embarrassed globally as well as domestically. Now, while the world was absorbed in what was happening in Afghanistan, the Pakistani military quietly went against its own government. And without Imran Khan's knowledge, they retained the former CIA Islamabad station chief as a lobbyist in Washington. Unsurprisingly, the Pakistani generals were now beginning to move independently. Then in February 2022, The Russia-Ukraine war broke out, and Imran Khan suddenly found himself in the middle of it. On the 24th of February, Imran was in Moscow to meet with President Vladimir Putin, ignoring demands from Jake Sullivan to not go. Jake Sullivan, who was then the National Security Advisor to Joe Biden, had called his Pakistani counterpart Moeed Yusuf and asked him to persuade Imran Khan to cancel his Russia trip. When photographs of Putin and Khan went viral online, United States did not view this as an innocent mistake. They perceived it to be a deliberate show of support by Imran Khan towards Russia. Now, what added fuel to fire was how Pakistan abstained from a UNGA resolution condemning the attack by Russia. And this, ladies and gentlemen, was the last nail in the coffin. American officials were angry with Imran for not aligning with Washington and reportedly told Pakistani interlocutors privately that the US-Pakistan relationship could not continue like this. And then, on the 7th of March in 2022 came America's final warning. Pakistan's ambassador in Washington, Asad Majid Khan, met with Donald Lu, the US Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asian Affairs. According to the leaked cable, here's what Lu told the ambassador: that all will be forgiven by Washington if Imran Khan was removed from office through a no-confidence vote. Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan was removed from office on the 9th of April 2022 in a no-confidence vote backed by Pakistan's military. His party, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, was outlawed, stripped of its electoral symbol right ahead of the 2024 general election, and it was barred from fielding any candidates under its own banner. Imran Khan and his wife Bushra Bibi were jailed, and they remain there even as we speak at the moment. So now, the viewer, you decide who really the hero is in this story and who the villain has been. But it doesn't end here. There's another revelation in this drop site report that exposes Pakistani embarrassment. In 2024, Pakistan sought nuclear second strike capability from China. But despite their close Iron Brother alliance, Beijing refused to cross the nuclear threshold. According to the report, the bilateral discussion stated that Chinese officials viewed the second strike demand as a direct and dangerous step into regional nuclear proliferation, and yielding to Islamabad's request would have flagrantly violated Beijing's own international non-proliferation commitments. In fact, the Chinese leadership calculated the global backlash and international penalties that they would face for transferring such sensitive technology to Pakistan. Once again, Pakistan's failure to get what it wants from its own old ally exposes the fault lines between what Field Marshal Asim Munir portrays to his country and the lies and hyperbole that lies beneath those claims. All right, shifting our focus now, a major shift may be unfolding in the Iran-US war, and it might just force American President Donald Trump to recalibrate his stance on Tehran's nuclear stockpile. Leaked details accessed by Saudi Arabian news channel Al Arabiya claims that Iran has agreed to a long-term freeze on parts of its nuclear program. Instead of a complete dismantling of its capabilities, the reported proposal also suggests that Tehran is willing to transfer enriched uranium to Russia, not to the United States, under specific conditions. Now, this raises a critical question. Will Donald Trump soften his position on Iran's nuclear stockpile if Tehran accepts restrictions without surrendering its entire program? Russia has remained a key figure in the negotiations, especially on the nuclear issue. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Moscow welcomes any voluntary Iranian concessions aimed at reducing global tensions.
Our position here is very simple. The basic principle is that Iran, like any other state party to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, has every right to enrich uranium for peaceful and energy purposes.
Now, Lavrov's remarks come weeks after Moscow reportedly offered to take custody of Iran's enriched uranium reserves as part of a broader diplomatic arrangement. Reports from Iran also claim that Washington has eased its tone during the ongoing negotiations. Iranian media outlet Tasnim claims that the United States has agreed to suspend sanctions on Iranian oil exports while talks continue. Citing those linked to the Iranian negotiating team, this is what the report claims, that Tehran continues to demand the complete removal of sanctions, while Washington is reportedly willing to temporarily lift only selected U.S. Treasury restrictions until a final agreement is reached. Iran earlier also said that indirect talks with the United States are continuing through Pakistani mediation. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai said that Tehran has firmly defended its demands in every round of negotiations and has conveyed its concerns directly to the American side through mediators. On Sunday last, Iran's Fars news agency said that Washington had presented a 5-point list, which included a demand for Iran to keep only one nuclear site in operation and transfer its stockpile of highly enriched uranium to the U.S. According to the report, America had refused to release even 25% of Iran's frozen assets or pay any reparations for the war damage. In an earlier proposal, remember, which was sent last week, Iran had called for an end to the war on all fronts, including Israel's campaign in Lebanon, as well as a halt to a U.S. naval blockade on Iranian ports in place since the 13th of April. It also called for the lifting of all American sanctions on Iran and the release of its assets frozen abroad. Fars, remember, which is a semi-Iranian state media, said that the Iranian proposal had emphasized that Tehran would continue to manage the strategic Strait of Hormuz, which is, as we all know, a vital energy conduit that Iran has largely kept closed since the start of the war. On Monday, Iran's Supreme National Security Council announced the formation of a new body to manage the strait. And now, it would be interesting to say and see what US President decides as his next course of action on Iran. Moving on, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Norwegian counterpart, Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store, held a press meet today after their delegation-level talks concluded. Prime Minister Modi began the joint media briefing by expressing his gratitude to the Norwegian Prime Minister for the warm welcome accorded to him. The Prime Minister then went on to talk about the sectors that India and Norway have agreed to work together upon.
Friends, रिसर्च, एजुकेशन और इनोवेशन भी हमारे संबंधों के मजबूत पिलर्स बने हैं। आज हमने सस्टेनेबिलिटी, ओशन एनर्जी, जियोलॉजी और हेल्थ जैसे क्षेत्रों में रिसर्च कोऑपरेशन बढ़ाने पर सहमति बनाई। इंजीनियरिंग, एआई, साइबर और डिजिटल जैसे सेक्टर में हम अपनी यूनिवर्सिटी और स्टार्टअप इकोसिस्टम को जोड़कर अपने पार्टनरशिप को फ्यूचर रेडी बनाएंगे। स्किल डेवलपमेंट और टैलेंट मोबिलिटी में भी हमारा सहयोग और व्यापक होने जा रहा है।
PM Modi's visit to Norway marks the first by an Indian Prime Minister in 43 long years. Norway is the fourth leg of his five-nation tour. The Prime Minister met with Prime Minister Gahr Store for talks today, and he will attend the third India-Nordic Summit tomorrow. After PM Modi landed in Oslo, he attended a welcome event by the Indian diaspora. He witnessed dance performances that reflected India's cultural diversity, and he said that he was proud of the diaspora for keeping the country's culture alive and vibrant. Remember, the India-Nordic summit scheduled for Tuesday this week is the third such event. The first summit was held in Stockholm, Sweden, back in 2018, and the second one was in Copenhagen, Denmark in 2022. The leaders of Denmark, Finland, Iceland and Sweden are all expected to attend tomorrow's summit in Oslo. And our assistant editor for Foreign Affairs, Siddhant Sibbal, has sent us this report. Take a look.
India and Norway have decided to upgrade their strategic partnership to Green Strategic Partnership. This was announced by the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Norwegian Prime Minister. Now, essentially, this entails more focus on green shipping, blue economy, clean technology, renewables. The message was the fact that the technologies of Norway can be given the scale of India, and that can provide global solutions. But the message was also on strategic alignments between India and Norway. We know that the focus was also when it comes to the global instability caused by conflicts both in Europe and in West Asia, and both leaders discussed on that as well. Now, on Tuesday, the Indian Prime Minister will take part in the India-Nordic Summit. This will be third such summit where there will be discussions on a range of issues, including on technologies and renewable. Siddhant Sibbal for WION from the government guest house in Oslo, Norway.
All right, shifting our focus now. Can Ukraine's latest move on the battlefield be a game changer? Well, it has unleashed long-range attack drones as it strikes deep into the Moscow region and sent a chilling message to Kremlin. Russia, on the other hand, rained missiles and swarm drones across Ukrainian cities. Remember, this comes as Vladimir Putin heads to Beijing on Tuesday for talks with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. The visit, remember, is coming just days after the big Trump-Xi summit. Our next report gets you more.
Ukraine is taking the war straight to Moscow's doorstep. After 3 days of unstoppable Russian strikes, Kiev is striking back hard. Ukraine has launched its largest drone attack on the heavily guarded Russian capital in a year. Ukrainian defense forces have admitted using domestically built drones to destroy targets in the Moscow region. Among the weapons used are RS-1 bars, a jet-powered drone with an estimated range of 700 to 800 km and a payload of approximately 100 kg. Ukraine also unleashed the Firepoint FP1, a long-range kamikaze drone which is said to have a range of up to 1600 km with a warhead of up to 113 kg. Another long-range drone used in the operation has been dubbed as the Bars SM Gladiator.
The priority remains the consistent build-up in the use of long-range strike capabilities to the fullest extent possible against a wide range of military targets, which are scattered across the vast territory of the aggressor's country.
Ukrainian Defense Ministry claims the drones struck the Angstom plant in Moscow region. It specializes in the production of high-tech products and microcircuits for high-precision weapons. On Saturday, sizable drone fragments fell on Russia's busiest air hub, triggering hours of flight delays and temporary airspace closures across major Moscow airports. The strikes come after Russia unleashed overwhelming firepower across Ukraine. Moscow fired 47 missiles and launched nearly 1,600 drones in just 3 days. Zelensky hails Ukraine's growing drone capability after massive Moscow strike.
Our long-range capabilities are significantly changing the situation and the overall perception of the Russian war around the world. Many partners are now signaling that they see what is happening and how everything has changed. The war is, quite predictably, returning to its home harbor.
Moscow is also striking back. Russian strikes have pounded Dnipro and Odessa, damaging homes, sparking fires across the key cities. The attacks come as US-mediated peace efforts remain frozen. The Kremlin says negotiations could resume after earlier dismissing talks as a low priority. But on the battlefield, diplomacy is being drowned out by drones, and with both sides expanding long-range strike capabilities, the war is entering a far more unpredictable phase. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
While most of the world debates artificial intelligence, space missions, and the future of humanity in 2026, Afghanistan is fighting a battle that should have been left behind in the past century: the right of a girl to exist as a human being. Taliban's Afghanistan today feels like a nation trapped in reverse. Every few months brings a new decree, a new restriction, a new reminder that freedom is being dismantled piece by piece. Girls are pushed out of classrooms. Women are erased from public life, and now even silence can be twisted into consent under laws surrounding child marriage. The Taliban have now issued a new family law regulation that recognizes marriages involving minors as legally valid under certain conditions. The law also states that children can seek annulment after reaching puberty, but only through a religious court order controlled by the Taliban. The regulation, titled Principles of Separation Between Spouses, was published in the Taliban's official gazette after approval by Taliban Supreme Leader Hibatullah Akhundzada. This document contains 31 articles and lays out the rules governing marriage, divorce, religious disputes, child marriage, missing husbands, apostasy, forced separation, breastfeeding, relations, and even accusations of adultery. Now, the center of the controversy is Taliban's interpretation of khiyar-ul-bulugh, or the option under puberty. This is a concept from Islamic jurisprudence which allows a child who was married at a young age to seek annulment after reaching puberty. But the Taliban version of this law comes with strict conditions. Article 5 states that if a minor, whether boy or girl, is married off by relatives other than the father or the grandfather, the marriage will still be considered as legally valid as long as the spouse is considered socially compatible and the dowry is deemed appropriate. The child can later request annulment after reaching puberty, but only through a court order. In other words, the child does not automatically gain freedom from the marriage. They must appeal to a Taliban-led religious court. The law also states that marriages involving a non-compatible spouse or an unfair dowry may be considered as invalid. However, the regulation also gives fathers and grandfathers broad authority over child marriages, and it reinforces the power of male guardians in family decisions. The law says a marriage may only be invalidated if a guardian is found to be abusive, mentally unfit, or morally corrupt. Another deeply controversial section is Article 7. This article states that the silence of a virgin girl after reaching puberty may be interpreted as consent to marriage. But the same rule does not apply to boys or previously married women. Their silence cannot automatically be treated as consent. Critics say this effectively allows child marriages to take place without clear or explicit approval from young girls, many of whom may be too afraid, pressured, or even powerless to speak out. Another section deals with breastfeeding relations, a rule in Islamic jurisprudence which considers children breastfed by the same woman as religious siblings who cannot marry each other. Now, if such a relationship is discovered between a husband and a wife, Taliban judges may order the marriage to be dissolved. This comes as the Taliban continue their wider crackdown on women and girls since returning to power in August 2021. Girls have been barred from education beyond the 6th grade. Women have been banned from universities. Restrictions have been imposed on women's employment, their movement, public appearances, and participation in society. The United Nations has repeatedly condemned these actions, calling them systemic violations of fundamental human rights. Human rights groups now warn that the Taliban are not just enforcing social restrictions, they are formally codifying hardline interpretations of religious law into the legal system itself. Millions of Afghan women and girls are slowly losing their right to choose their own future, the right to study, the right to work, the right to speak, the right to say no, the right to exist in public life with dignity, without fear and without permission. Now, as the world moves forward, many in Afghanistan fear their country is being pushed back deeper into the dark era. Right, with that, let's tell you what is coming up on the other side of Gravitas. The Ebola outbreak has become a huge cause of concern, with the World Health Organization now declaring it a global health emergency. All eyes are now on preparedness by countries. And in India's Jammu and Kashmir, a fishing festival is making way for some healthy competition and local Kashmiri culture being displayed. Details coming up in just a bit. With at least 246 suspected cases and 80 suspected deaths, a deadly Ebola outbreak has gripped Democratic Republic of Congo for the 17th time now. Neighboring Uganda has been impacted as well. The World Health Organization has now stepped in and declared this a public health emergency of international concern. In a country gripped by conflict, the local authorities have been scrambling to contain the latest outbreak involving the Bundibugyo strain of Ebola that dates back to April. As per reports, the earliest known victim developed symptoms on the 24th of April and died 3 days later. While a majority of the cases in the Democratic Republic of Congo are concentrated in areas of the Ituri province, such as Bunia, cases have been confirmed in the capital Kinshasa as well as the Goma city, which is controlled by the M23 rebel group. The virus has spread into Uganda as well, which has reported 2 confirmed cases, including 1 death so far. And amid this, experts have criticized the delay in detection of this outbreak.
Le risque est très grand.
The risk is very high that the next pandemic will start from the DRC. There is a strong chance this will happen because our ecosystem is favorable to the development of various pathogens. But the problem, as I told you, is the weakness of surveillance. Our system is very weak at detecting an outbreak.
Au développement de différents pathogènes.
A highly contagious and fatal disease, Ebola, was first detected in the Democratic Republic of Congo way back in 1976. 6 strains, including Sudan and Ebola Zaire, have been identified. Over 15,000 deaths have been attributed to this very disease so far. Now, why is this disease so dangerous? It has an average case fatality rate of around 50%. Associated with fruit bats, it spreads via animal to human transmission. Infected humans then pass on the disease to others through fluids such as vomit, blood, and semen. And this is not all. Direct contact with the last remains of the deceased Ebola patients has been a major transmitter of the virus as well. On an average, people begin showing Ebola symptoms 8 to 10 days after exposure. Initially, the symptoms are generic, such as fever, weakness, muscle pain, headaches, and sore throat. This is followed by loss of appetite, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea in severe cases. Internal and external bleeding has also been seen. Now, as authorities and aid agencies have intensified efforts to contain the outbreak, Democratic Republic of Congo has established new treatment centers where patients are being treated free of cost. The last Ebola disease outbreak in DRC lasted from 4th of September till the 1st of December last year, with a total of 64 cases, including 45 deaths.
The sooner we take the patient in for care, the sooner we treat them, the sooner we will stop the movement, what we call the spread of the virus. So this is not a mystical disease. Make yourself known so that you can be taken care of and so that we can prevent the disease from spreading. That is really the message. Treatment is free. Come and get treated.
Now, the deadliest Ebola outbreak was seen in West Africa. While the epidemic was first reported in Guinea in December 2013, it soon spread to countries like Liberia, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone. By the time the epidemic was declared over in June 2016, more than 11,000 deaths had been recorded. The current outbreak is potentially more challenging to contain because the currently licensed vaccines protect people from infection with Ebola zaire only. And at present, 2 vaccines to combat the Sudan strain are undergoing clinical trials. Supportive care measures for Ebola disease include rehydration and blood transfusions. Already, the WHO has rushed a team of 35 experts and 7 tons of emergency medical supplies to the impacted areas. While it has advised both affected nations to undertake several measures such as cross-border screening, travel restrictions for patients and their contacts, it is yet to designate this outbreak as a pandemic. No other country has been advised to close its borders yet or place restrictions on trade and travel as of now. Even as US President Donald Trump is unable to wriggle out of the Iran war, is America creating a pretext for military intervention in Cuba next? Amid Trump's repeated threats of bringing about a regime change, Cuba has now leveled this allegation at United States over a latest report. It all started with a report that was published by Axios, referring to alleged classified US intelligence. It claimed that Cuba has acquired over 300 military drones and has begun discussing plans to use them to attack the US base at Guantanamo Bay, other installations, as well as military vessels. Now, this report quoted American officials as saying that this island nation had been acquiring attack drones of varying capabilities from Russia and Iran since 2023. They cited intel intercepts to indicate that Cuban officials are trying to learn how Iran resisted the United States during the recent 40-day war. However, Cuba has rubbished this claim, maintaining that it doesn't desire war. Instead, it has accused the United States of creating a pretext for a potential war. Its foreign minister, Bruno Rodriguez, said, and I'm quoting him here, "The US government builds day after day a fraudulent case to justify the ruthless economic war against the Cuban people and the eventual military aggression," unquote. Remember, this comes at a time when tensions between the US and Cuba have been soaring. Since Donald Trump threatened tariffs on any country supplying the island nation with fuel in January, allies like Mexico and Venezuela have cut off oil shipments to Cuba, leading to an acute energy crisis. It received its last oil shipment in late March, when Russia delivered approximately 700,000 barrels. On 14th of May, the island nation announced that it has run out of diesel and fuel oil. And since then, the crisis has deepened. Multiple businesses have shut down across Havana. Public transport has nearly disappeared. Multiple parts of the country are now enduring power cuts lasting up to 22 hours a day. This has sparked off protests on the streets. And amid all of this, America has offered support for free and fast satellite internet and $100 million in humanitarian assistance to Cuba. In fact, they've even claimed that the communist government is refusing it. On its part, though, Cuba said that it was willing to consider this offer, but stressed that no strings should be attached with it. On the other hand, CIA Director John Ratcliffe made a rare trip to Cuba last week, where he held high-level talks with senior Cuban officials. Now, as per reports, he warned Havana against engaging in hostilities and made it clear that the US would seriously engage with the island's government on economic and security issues, but only if it makes fundamental changes. In a potential new confrontation between the two countries, reports suggest that US is planning to indict Cuba's former leader, Raul Castro, on charges related to the 1996 shooting down of two planes operated by humanitarian group Brothers to the Rescue. Now, while Trump refused to explicitly comment on this case, he's once again dubbed Cuba as a country in decline.
I don't want to comment on that. I'll let DOJ comment on it. But they need help, as you know. And you talk about a declining country. They are really a nation or a country in decline. So we're going to see. We have a lot to talk about on Cuba, but not maybe for today.
Now, with Cuba's energy crisis seeing no signs of abating, it remains to be seen whether Havana strikes a deal with the US, which is threatening to open a new war front. All right, shifting our focus now to India, the state of Haryana has reported a major drop in girl child births, prompting the state government to step up action against illegal sex selection and involve religious leaders in awareness campaigns. To this effect, the state government has roped in Pandits, Maulvis and Granthis to tackle the declining sex ratio at birth, and the figures alone tell the story. The sex ratio at birth for the first 4 months of 2026 has reportedly fallen to 898 girls per 1,000 boys. During the same period last year, the figure stood at 909. The fall has led the government to direct Pandits, Maulvis and Granthis across the state to counsel newlywed couples against sex selection during marriage ceremonies. As per experts, Haryana has historically had the lowest sex ratio in India, driven by a deep-rooted cultural preference for male children and exacerbated by female feticide. In fact, in January of 2015, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had launched the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao campaign from Haryana's Panipat. After the 2011 census showed Haryana's sex ratio at birth at 879, the child sex ratio for the 0 to 6 age group at the time stood at 834 girls per 1,000 boys, which is the lowest among all the states of India. The state later recorded improvement. The sex ratio at birth rose from 876 in 2015 to 900 in 2016, and it peaked at 923 in 2019. After a dip during the COVID years, the figure returned to 923 in 2025. Taking cognizance of the declining sex ratio trend, Haryana's additional Chief Secretary for Health, Sumita Mishra, last week held a review meeting and directed districts to intensify raid against illegal sex determination and strengthen surveillance, along with community organizations and local institutions. Religious leaders have also been asked to take part in social awareness efforts. India's agricultural-linked economy is likely to be heading toward a major test this year, with a weakening monsoon, the growing threat of El Nino and global fertilizer supply disruptions, raising fears of lower kharif output and a possible drought-like situation in certain parts of the country. At the same time, this crisis may also push India toward a potential millet revolution. A new study by scientists from the Indian Council of Agricultural Research has found that El Nino years in the past, specifically 2002, 2004 and 2009, caused more than a 10% fall in key kharif crops such as paddy and maize. impacting paddy production across the 77 districts in India, and impacting maize output across 65 districts in different parts of the country. The study found the biggest impact on paddy cultivation in Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, Jharkhand, and Odisha. Now, what is El Nino? El Nino essentially is a climate phenomena linked to the warming of ocean surfaces in the central and eastern Pacific. It often weakens India's monsoon and disrupts rainfall patterns. The India Meteorological Department, in its first long-range forecast released last month, has predicted monsoon rainfall at just 92% of the long-period average. That puts this year's rain forecast in the below normal category, raising concerns over a tough agricultural season for millions of farmers in the country. The Indian Council of Agricultural Research study showed El Nino creates sharp spatial and temporal variations in monsoon rainfall, causing major losses in crops like rice, maize, pearl millet, and sorghum. At the same time, 2026 could reportedly become India's year of millets. And why is that? The Iran war and the global fertilizer supply shocks have increased the cost of chemicals, reportedly pushing farmers toward crops like bajra, moong, and other pulses. Millets require less water. They grow quickly in semi-arid conditions, and they need fewer fertilizers and pesticides. Now, with India producing nearly 40% of the world's millets, these crops are reportedly now emerging as a strategic asset for food security and climate resilience. For years, measles was considered a disease that the world had learned to control. A simple 2-dose vaccine had turned what was once a deadly childhood threat into a preventable illness. Many countries even declared the virus as eliminated, marking one of modern public health's greatest achievements. But in 2026, that sense of safety is now beginning to collapse. From the United States to Mexico and now across South Asia, measles is making a deadly comeback. It is exposing the cost of falling vaccination rates, overburdened health systems, and growing gaps in public health coverage. It began quietly in Mexico. A 9-year-old boy visited relatives in Seminole, Texas. When the child returned home to Mexico, he developed a red rash, and within weeks, classmates started falling sick, schools were shut down, and the virus had already crossed borders. The small town in America soon became the epicenter of the largest measles outbreak in the United States in more than 3 decades. Mexico has now recorded more than 17,000 confirmed measles cases since the start of 2025, with at least 40 deaths linked to complications. These deaths include babies and farm workers. And most of the people who have been infected were unvaccinated. Health authorities say that the outbreak first spread through a remote Mennonite community in Chihuahua state before moving into agricultural labor networks and indigenous communities. By the end of 2025, the Chihuahua alone reported more measles cases than the entire United States. Experts warn this is what happens when immunization coverage begins to slip. Remember, measles is one of the most contagious viruses known to science. It essentially spreads through coughing, sneezing, or even talking, and the virus can remain in the air for up to 2 hours. One infected person can potentially spread it to 18 others. In young children, the consequences can be devastating, and they may vary from pneumonia to brain swelling. The crisis is now expanding far beyond North America. Bangladesh is currently facing its deadliest measles outbreak in decades. Authorities have reported 459 child deaths since mid-March of 2026, along with thousands of confirmed cases and tens of thousands of suspected infections. Globally, 82 countries have achieved or maintained official measles elimination status. But health experts say that the status remains fragile. Recently, the virus has been making inroads in the Americas, with the US and Canada losing its measles-free status following prolonged outbreaks. Moving on, bees may be carrying a secret superpower hidden inside their tiny bodies. Scientists now say nearly 90% of bee species can sense Earth's magnetic field, giving them a natural internal compass. The discovery is opening up a fascinating new window into how some of nature's smallest workers navigate the planet with astonishing precision. Take a look.
For years, scientists wondered how bees always seemed to know where to go. How they could fly long distances, zigzag through forests, find flowers, and still return home with near-perfect accuracy. Now, researchers believe they have found one of the answers: magnets inside bees. A major new study has revealed that nearly 90% of bee species may possess magnetoreception. In simple language, that means they can detect Earth's magnetic field, almost like having a built-in GPS system. Scientists analyzed hundreds of bee species and found many carry tiny magnetic particles inside their bodies. These particles may help bees sense direction, altitude, and movement while flying. The ability is already known in animals like sea turtles, pigeons, and sharks. But discovering it in so many bee species has stunned researchers, and the timing matters. Bees are among the world's most important pollinators. Around 1/3 of global food production depends on pollination, from apples to almonds and coffee to cucumbers. Bees quietly help keep farms and ecosystems alive. Now, researchers have found that bees actually sense the magnetic field of the Earth to map out their flight paths. It is a biological GPS system hidden in plain sight. They use this superpower to track down blossoms, pollinate crops, and return home safely. This discovery proves that bees do not just fly. They read the invisible forces of the planet to keep humanity alive. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
In the majestic mountains of Kashmir, an ancient tradition still pulls entire villages into the water every summer. No machines, no modern tools, just baskets and nets. Our next story takes a look at this 400-year-old ritual that blends celebration with conservation. Take a look.
Before sunrise, the crowd begins to gather. Men wade into water carrying handmade wicker baskets and old mosquito nets. Then the hunt begins. In South Kashmir's Anantnag district, hundreds of villagers assemble every May for this centuries-old Rohan Posh festival at the historic Panzat spring near Kazigund. What looks like a massive community fishing contest is actually something far more important. It's a massive annual cleanup operation hidden inside a celebration.
I was in the 6th grade in the 1980s when I first became aware of this fish festival, and since then I have seen this tradition continue every year. Along with the festival, people also clean the main water source at Panzat Nag, where fish are caught as part of the celebration.
This fish festival has been going on for a very long time. I am nearly 70 years old, and even before my time, we inherited this tradition from our grandfathers and great-grandfathers. I believe it has been celebrated for at least 1 or 2 centuries, with each generation keeping the tradition alive.
The festival has survived for nearly 4 centuries. There are no loudspeakers or flashy stages. Tradition does the work. Entire families take the day off to join the effort. Some use woven baskets passed down through generations. Beneath the joy lies a deeper message. In an era of shrinking water bodies and environmental stress, the Kashmir tradition has quietly preserved a powerful idea: communities protecting nature together.
As the villagers move through the spring waters to catch the fish, they also pull out weed, debris and silt, choking the natural resource. This process is done before the paddy cultivation across Jammu and Kashmir to make sure that the water flow maintains all through the year. With video journalist Firoz Idris Loan for WION World is One.
What started as a casual social media joke has now turned into another major online controversy surrounding billionaire Elon Musk. The owner of X is facing intense backlash after a series of posts about Instagram sparked accusations of misogyny. The controversy began when Elon Musk joined a viral online discussion about social media habits and posting culture. During this exchange, Musk described Instagram as a platform just for girls. Now, this comment, many users said, reinforced stereotypes about women and social media. But it was his follow-up remark that triggered even stronger reaction online. Elon Musk posted that when grown men share their Instagram profiles, he questions whether they are transitioning. Critics quickly accused him of using gender identity as a punchline and mocking both men and, women who use Instagram frequently. Social media platforms were soon flooded with reactions, with many users calling the comments as insensitive, offensive, and part of a larger pattern of remarks targeting women and LGBTQ+ communities. Some defended Musk as they described the posts as typical internet humor and accused critics of overanalyzing the comments. The debate also quickly took on a bigger dimension. Some users linked the comments to the ongoing rivalry between X and Meta. Remember, since taking over Twitter and rebranding it as X, Elon Musk has repeatedly positioned his platform as a space for political debate and free speech. This has often contrasted it with Instagram's image-driven and lifestyle-focused culture.
I beg to differ. I find it really quite hilarious. More than 50% of the users on Instagram are men, only around 47% are women. So, Elon Musk, I think you're mistaken.
Why should Instagram only be for girls? It should be for everybody. What's the difference between a girl and a boy today? And the world is unisex, and girls have as much rights as boys. So I don't think there should be any restriction on anybody. Everybody should be on Instagram. I hardly use Instagram, but I don't want to be restricted. Why only girls?
Now, as screenshots of the Instagram posts continue to circulate online, neither Elon Musk nor X has issued any apology or a clarification. And the controversy has now evolved into a much bigger debate about the responsibility of influential figures, the limits of free speech, and whether online jokes can still cause real-world harm. All right, with that, let's take you back into history on this day. That's 18th of May in 1974, 52 years ago. India took the world by surprise by conducting her first nuclear test under the leadership of the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. This historic day would alter the country's strategic trajectory forever and announce India's nuclear arrival. This operation that established India as a nuclear power carried an almost paradoxical code name, Smiling Buddha. As a part of this operation, also known as Pokhran-1, a nuclear device was detonated at the Pokhran test range in the state of Rajasthan under the supervision of key army generals and Raja Ramanna, the then director of Bhabha Atomic Research Center. Officially termed as a peaceful nuclear explosion, it made India the first nation outside the 5 permanent UN Security Council members to conduct a confirmed nuclear test. Now, India's nuclear journey began soon after independence, with Homi Bhabha emerging as the architect of the country's atomic ambitions. In May 1998, India went a step further by conducting a series of underground nuclear tests at Pokhran. However, Operation Smiling Buddha remains deeply relevant 5 decades later, as it marked a new chapter in India's nuclear energy and defense journey. All right, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas. Thanks very much for joining us tonight. Bye-bye. Good night.
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
Breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is One.
WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One. In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter. Because we believe in decoding the real picture